Welcome everyone to Bahai.Chat, a conversation series dedicated to our interconnectedness. It's an uplifting moment when we can turn our thoughts to spiritual ideas. Each weekly session is rooted in the Baha'i writings and the fundamental teachings of the oneness of God, religion, and humanity, led by individuals who are putting these principles into action. One of the central themes of the Baha'i faith is the oneness of mankind. Over a century and a half ago, in 1858, Baha'u'llah, the faith's founder, an exile and prisoner, revealed his hidden words in which he wrote, "O children of men, know ye not why we created you all from the same dust? That no one should exalt himself over the other. Ponder at all times in your hearts how you were created. Since we have created you all from one same substance, it is incumbent upon you to be even as one soul, to walk with the same feet, eat with the same mouth, and dwell in the same land. That from your inmost being, by your deeds and actions, the signs of oneness, the essence of detachment, may be made manifest." There's no doubt that we're living in trying times, times of growing friction, division, and disunity, times that require serious thought, reflection, and conversations around the reality of systemic racism, anti-Blackness, and white supremacy. As important as is participating in the often uncomfortable process of understanding and addressing this baleful effect of centuries-long racism in America, we can and should also find ourselves inspired by the wonderful work toward racial amity that has throughout our history of conflict taken place quietly in the background. We can celebrate the lives, actions, and accomplishments of folks of all colors, many of whom have sacrificed their personal well-being and even their lives for principles of oneness, working together over typically divided lines to make a difference in the world. Highlighting race amity, America's other tradition, is the focus of the important work that has for more than a decade now been undertaken by the National Center for Race Amity. The NCRA was established in January in 2010. It's based in Boston, Massachusetts, and received its founding grant from the W.K. Kellogg Foundation. So we are really delighted to have some of the NCRA staff members and organizers of its coming November virtual annual conference with us today. So let's get the conversation going. I see he's with me already, and it's my pleasure to introduce to you the founder and executive director of the NCRA, Dr. William Smitty Smith, who earned his PhD at the University of Massachusetts in Amherst. He's an educator and an award-winning documentary filmmaker. Through his work, Smitty peels back the layers of deception to reveal America's complex march toward racial reconciliation. I'm honored to call him my dear brother of many, many years. Smitty, welcome to the chat, my friend.
Hey, David, thank you so much for having me and our team here today. And, I know John Lewis is smiling at us because I have to tell the viewers and listeners that we're two guys in our friendship who just constantly are trying to make good trouble. So David and I are into all kinds of cabals and schemes to advance this notion that we both hold in our hearts. That is the unity and oneness of the whole human family. So delighted to be here and share about the National Center for Race Amity and the work that we do. And this is our 10th anniversary year for both the center and the National Race Amity Conference, which will be virtual this year. In January, we will be continuing the documentary programs that we've been producing for PBS, American Stories, Race Amity, and the Other Tradition. And I might say that the conference that we're going into is a build on to, and hopefully many of you who are joining us now were a part of the 2020 Race Amity Day celebration. And if you weren't there, you can still catch it on the YouTube channel. So far, we've had over 16,000 views of that wonderful day-long, well, actually, it was a 90-minute long celebration back in June. And we're building on that for this conference that you can register for at www.raceamity.org or www.raceamityconference.org. So out of the commercial phase and back to just being here and with our wonderful team. Thank you, David.
Pleasure. Why don't you introduce your team and maybe start with our moderator today, Bill Anderson.
Yeah, my dear brother, Bill, just a bit of introduction and we can get into our program. Bill Anderson is one of those people who walk the walk. And when I first met Bill over 10 years ago at Emerson College, where I was working and where he was a professor, he was one of the first rallying to support, to work with students and faculty around issues of race amity. Went to the University of Washington. He got his MBA from the Wharton School, served in the Peace Corps. And I just might amplify that a bit. People praise military service in this country, and I'm a military veteran, Vietnam. But my hat truly, and I mean this sincerely, Bill, particularly in that early era when the Peace Corps first started, that those people who serve in the Peace Corps are truly American heroes. Unlike the military, where you got a platoon, a company, a battalion, you got support, you got people actually cooking your food, and you just go get it, serve it on a tray. Even in Vietnam, Peace Corps people, you just dropped out there, and it's you. And maybe if you got a partner out there in the field, they're working with you, but it's just so heroic. What a lonely, there's no platoon leader, nobody to turn to for what you've learned in that service and the imprint you people had in Africa and other parts of the world is truly commendable. So, I just want to give you a little salute for that early service. Bill has had a stellar career as in both in the field of marketing communications, where he worked for Procter and Gamble and Company, and for Hill Holiday in the marketing strategic marketing and planning, and then came to Emerson College as a professor in the marketing department. But he and I have also been making good trouble. And he's a guy that is Johnny on the spot, walks the walk, and ready to do the do. So without further introduction, I want to introduce everybody to Brother Bill Anderson. Bill, thanks so much for doing this.
Thank you, Smitty. And welcome to everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you happen to be. Just listening to Smitty, I got to live up to all of that now. But it's sort of a bookend for me that my adult life began, as Smitty just mentioned, as a Peace Corps volunteer right at the beginning of the Peace Corps in Sierra Leone, West Africa. He mentioned a partner. It turns out that my wife, now of many, many years, was also a volunteer in that particular group. And we were married in Sierra Leone and have been happy ever since then. It's kind of a bookend for me because the other end of the career after Emerson, I met Smitty at Emerson and immediately went to him when he was launching the whole diversity initiative at the college and became engaged with the work he was doing there, when he left Emerson, followed up and worked with him at the beginning of the establishment of the National Center for Race Amity. And when I retired a year ago, I picked up the phone and I called him because he's somebody who I felt I could truly respect, and I could truly respect the work he was doing. And if I could make a contribution, I would be there. Let me just make one comment, though, about this idea of being a marketing director for the National Center of Race Amity and marketing in general. The real definition of marketing is you don't do anything. What marketing actually does is tells one group of people about what another group of people is actually working on. And that, therefore, I'm the ideal candidate to be the moderator for this session. And I'm really glad to have the opportunity to work with Smitty and his whole group. And there's two other members of the panel that I would like to have them introduce themselves to you. And Martha and Michelle. And Martha, maybe you could start with a little recap of how you got into this good trouble.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you, Smitty. Well, actually, I kind of grew up in this whole race amity and civil rights in our family. My dad was very active in the civil rights. He was also a Baha'i. And so from a very early age, this idea of race unity and the oneness of humanity was something that I grew up with. And Dad, until his death at 95, was active in the National Center for Race Amity and actually received a Medal of Honor from the National Center for Race Amity. So many of us in the family are involved in one way or another. But I'm really happy. I've always wanted to be involved with the National Center, but I was working a full-time job and whatnot. And so about 3 years ago, I think it was about 3 years or maybe longer, who knows, but I became involved. My background is in technology. I've been in technology for well over 30 years. And so I started helping out with the websites and things like that. And now just recently working on the conference, which has been really exciting.
Thank you. Michelle, just a little bit about your own background.
Oh, sure. It's a very interesting, windy background. I, in my 30s, decided to go back to school and for a long time, and then was interrupted many times through having children and what have you. After so many years in college, I realized, you know what I really love is education. And so I went into education as a elementary and special education teacher, but then they laid off tons of people right as I graduated, which was fine because I really use it for everything. And I also have a sociology background, which means that you like to be involved in everything. So, so I ended up coming to the National Center for Race Amity because my aunt, Rebecca, was working with Smitty for many years as the conference evolved and the organization evolved. And she said, why don't you come and volunteer with me? You know, and I was like, sure, I've always wanted to go to this conference. You know, it was in Boston. I live in New York. It was a little, you know, much for me actually to just take the time and go, you know, without being a volunteer. So I went and volunteered because my aunt called me and said, you know what, after all, I can't volunteer this year. So why don't you just go ahead and coordinate the volunteering? And so, you know, like a lot of things, we just get thrown into it, and it was wonderful. And I learned, and I just was so excited to be part of it. And I did that for a few years. And then there was a call for people to see what could they offer. And I thought, I don't know what I have to offer, but let me just throw down all these things and see if any of it is a fit. And Smitty contacted me and said, you know, I would love to have a project coordinator. So here I am.
And hopefully, if you're in the audience, you'll hear some things that might stimulate and motivate you to get involved, or something that you might like to do for yourself. Race Amity has a very, very broad perspective and a multitude of extensions as to where they can be impactful. I would just make one mention. The state of Massachusetts, for example, has adopted the second Sunday in June as Race Amity Day for the state, and through the National Center for Race Amity. Announcements go out to every Middlesex village and town in the state of Massachusetts with the encouragement to take and celebrate that day in their own ways with their own people. And the last number I have from Smitty, I think, was in 2019, and well over 100 different cities, towns picked up and did something to celebrate and move this idea of race amity forward. The idea of race amity, as I see it from my point of view, and we'd be a subhead for what we're kind of trying to do today with this chat session, is called working together. And to get to where we want to be and to deal with some of the issues that we're all aware of going on today, if we don't work together, we're probably not going to make as much progress as we could, and we're not going to solve the problems that that confront all of us. I'd like to ask you about your involvement in Race Amity and what it means to you, and how you see these connections between Baha'i, Race Amity, and the society that we live in relative to the work that you do. And because we're talking about the founding of Race Amity, Smitty, if you don't mind, I'll start with you.
I would say one of the things, Bill, is that the personification of the power of amity and friendship to advance access, equity, and change. Martha, Michelle, and I are Baha'is, and you're not a Baha'i. I know you're investigating the Baha'i faith because you're asking me a gazillion questions, which is good. But I want to just hold that up for a minute as a way that friendship, creating relationships, advance change, and certainly just drawing on our friendship, yours and mine, starting at Emerson College, how that's drawn and circled back to your now taking your enormous skills and expertise in helping us advance Race Amity through developing marketing strategies. So I wanted to just mention that because we often talk about stuff in the abstract, you know, like, well, Race Amity can create relationships, but I like to draw on the reality now for all of our viewers and listeners, that there are people out there with good minds, good hearts, who we all need to put to work in this work. In terms of the center itself, amity, and now it's becoming a common word, people's ears. It's soft on people's ears. 10 years ago, it was not that it was harsh on their ears, but it was strange. My wife's cousin, who ran an ad agency, or still runs it, in Boston, said to me when I was framing the National Center for Race Amity, he says, Amity, Smitty, that's weird, man. What does that word even mean? Being the supreme optimist. I said, well, you know, there's a time, Lenny, when I first heard the word Google, a good friend of my wife's had said to me, hey, Smitty, I was talking about something. She says, well, you should Google it. You should go to Google, is what she said, because it wasn't yet a verb. And I said, Google, what is Google? It's a weird word. She says, Google, it's a thing. And so I said, man, that is so strange. Google, what a crazy word. And now, of course, we use Google in all forms. Amity, again, I think is advancing in the dialogue and in the conversation. And I'm actually seeing leaders of thought increasingly refer to amity as an element in this discussion. So we centered, you know, we created the National Center for Race Amity, and we're advancing it. Because soon we will, and I'll more later in the conversation, share that a few details about the opening of the National Race Amity Institute in Atlanta, Georgia, which will be a center, an extension of our work at the National Center, but it'll be for study and service on this whole subject. And just before giving the mic back to you guys, I want to mention that there are deep friendships here, long friendships. And I know I'll make her blush probably, but I've known Martha since she was a kid. Martha was a student of mine at an alternative prep school in Springfield. And of course, she was 8 and I was 17. And it's just so wonderful to have seen her life take all of its trajectory and the professional skills that she's developed. And of course, knowing her even further through her father, Ray Elliott, who was just a stalwart champion. This guy was the rock of Race Amity. So it's particularly joyous to be working with Martha at this stage. So I'll stop with that. But friendship abounds, and it's how we get the work done.
Martha.
Geez, I don't even know where to begin, but let me just say that, the National Center for Race Amity, creates forums and initiatives to advance this discourse on race, right? And one of the things, and so there are many different initiatives, and I'll answer your question, Bill. But I wanted to just tell a quick story because this really, explains why I'm really excited about working for NCRA. And this idea of the other tradition. So one of my staff members had a little kid, 6 years old, and came home. And when she came home, she was a little white child, and she came home and she says, "Mom, are we white?" And the mother was confused, like, "What are you talking about?" She goes, "Are we white?" And the mother says, "Well, of course you're white. I'm white, Daddy's white, Grandpa's white." And she went running into her room screaming, "I don't want to be white." Just screaming, "I don't want to be white. I don't want to be white." And what happened was the mother found out that child was introduced for the first time of our history of enslaving Africans in this country. And so, of course, she didn't want anything to do with that, right? And then on the flip side, literally the same time, I heard of another little girl who was biracial, actually, and her mom, same age, and her mom was reading to her the story of Martin Luther King. And when it got to when he was assassinated, she became really enraged and actually was crying. And really, the kid was almost 6, okay? And so for her birthday, she told her mom that she wanted people dressed in African-American heroes and sheroes. On her birthday cake, she had Obama, a picture of Obama, a picture of Martin Luther King, and a picture of herself. Okay, so this 6-year-old birthday party, right? And so she was, this is something that she was really passionate about. And so when I think of the other tradition, I think about how we learn a lot about the tradition of racism in this country, but we don't learn so much about what the National Center calls it the other tradition. So for example, imagine if the first little girl learned also of the collaboration, if you will, between Mary Bethune, Eleanor Roosevelt, for example. She could see herself maybe in that role. And so how powerful this idea of the other tradition is. And so I thought about these 2 little girls. What if they knew each other and collaborated with each other and became friends with each other, fell in love with each other? How powerful that would be. And so this, again, is one of the messages, as a Baha'i, we believe that we literally are, one human family, and not just, for real, we're one human family. We're sisters and brothers. I'm not my brother's keeper, I am my brother. And so some of this discourse that happens is very, very powerful because it looks at really creating those genuine bonds where we look at the human and make that connection. And once we make that connection, we want the best for our brother. We'll fight for our brother. We'll collaborate with our brother.
Thank you very much. And by the way, I'm not a Baha'i, but I buy into everything that you just said. Michelle, your reflections on these connections and the contribution that you're making or you're hoping to make.
My mom became a Baha'i when I was 5, and life was never the same after that. She all of a sudden found the thing. She grew up as the daughter of a preacher. And so when she found the thing that really resonated with her in the Baha'i faith, this idea of the oneness of humanity, she was just on fire. She took us everywhere because she just decided, she looked around her white neighborhood. She decided that, well, we need to go find people and, of color and talk to them about this too, because like Martha said, that, it's not that you're you are your brother. And she found people everywhere to talk about and befriend, talk about these ideas with and to befriend, and was always bringing people to our home. We became quite the center. We're just in little old Geneva, New York. We became quite the center of culture, actually, because of the just constant stream of people coming in and out of our house. At one point, our neighbors gathered a petition to kick us out of our neighborhood.
Wow.
Because of that. Until my mom found some allies in the neighborhood that really began to understand and then to also stand up for what she was actually doing there. I mean, I've had experiences all my life, just like at one point around that same time, unfortunately, my parents were separating and we moved to this little migrant town in New York that's north of here called Sodas Point. And that was about the time that schools had become desegregated. And the response in this little rural town was to send all of the kids that were white to a private school. And the kids of color went to the public school. And we had moved there, and my mother was interested in education and got a job as a teacher's aide. And I was the only one of my sisters who was school age at the time, went into a second grade classroom as the only white kid. And I had just left a school where there was maybe 2 or 3 Black kids in my first grade class. And that's another story for another day. But anyways, so I got to experience what it was like to be the other. And then I also got to experience a different form of enculturation. So it was quite an experience, and it informed everything for me. So I was always encouraged to bring home friends of, all kind of cultures and races, and to meet their families and to continue on. So that informed my life.
Of if you were going to be in this conference, what would be the headline about the theme or the underlying purpose of this year's get together?
There is an extraordinary need for us collectively to find a path to bridging the racial divide and to engage and move toward healing in our nation in terms of all the racial wrongs, all the wrongs based on racism and racist behavior. Fortunately, we've been blessed, and it's truly a blessing, with this incredible vision, national vision, that predates going back to the founding of the nation. E pluribus unum, of many one. What a lofty, lofty vision and goal to have in these trying times. So we try to, use the KISS principle, keep it simple, and say, for this conference and our work, we want to focus on resetting ourselves to our destiny, resetting to our destiny. And we do believe America's destiny is unity. And just as a footnote, spiritually, I say that because it is at the core and center of my faith, of the Baha'i faith. And much of the work, in fact, that we do is centered in terms of race amity on the visit of the son of the founder of the Baha'i faith Abdu'l-Baha to America in 1912, and further his encouraging the Baha'i community to reach out and engage with the Bill Andersons of the nation and formulate the first National Race Amity Convention in 1921 in Washington, D.C. And so long-term for us, of course, in resetting to our destiny, e pluribus unum, we're going to be doing a centenary celebration of that first National Race Amity Conference next year. But meanwhile, as we do that, and I really just want to, I have to tip my hat and just say with love in my heart, the appreciation for Martha, Michelle, and other team members is an extraordinary task that they're engaging. And man, it is not sitting around eating bonbons. There are so many moving pieces to this thing. And so I'm just so grateful, guys, to having you handle this and to be doing this. We're moving toward e pluribus unum. That's how we frame this. We're resetting toward our collective destiny.
Thank you. The whole conference is under the e pluribus unum theme, and all of the moving parts of the National Center for Race Amity. It all gets down to the people, the presenters, the panels that you set up. If you could just talk, Michelle, a little bit about how you get people squared away to make sure that they have all the freedom and the expression of the things that they bring to the party as the people you recruited, but also kind of stay centered on the idea of e pluribus unum.
It's such a collaborative process. It's not just me that's doing all those things. But thank you for asking me, because this is the part I love. So you get connected to all these wonderful people doing great works around the country, some through submitting, through a call for proposals, and some through Smitty's vast connection and array of people that he talks to and becomes connected to through the work that he's been doing for so long. And then different people come to light through sharing, what all of our experiences are.
So one of the things that about the Race Amity Conference, when it's in person, is it's a small boutique, if you will, conference that really lends itself to intimacy. So you see all these wonderful thought leaders from around the country, and you get to actually sit down and talk with them and, have that dialogue with them and eat with them. So it's very intimate. So we really wanted to take that spirit into the online space, which, as Michelle said, isn't as easy as you think. So we have a wonderful team. I mean, I think that's what makes it, so much easier. Smitty mentioned, we have graphic people, we have video people, we have technical people. And so my job really is to make sure that we're all on track and to take that wonderful conference that we have in the physical space, and how does that translate, and how do we still keep that intimacy, if you will, in the virtual space.
What do you hope the outcome will be this year? What will you have accomplished from the conference itself?
I think for me, it's not only just a deeper understanding of what Race Amity is, but for people to take action. So for them to walk away and say, okay, how do I bring this to my community? What can I do? And that's what I hope comes out of this conference.
Okay. Michelle?
Yeah, I mean, for people to be inspired and connected and come up with ways to get going in their own community. And like, what is amity if they didn't understand it before? It's easy to get wrapped up in the tradition that is racism, right? And feel so sunken and in despair that you forget that there's this parallel tradition that's been ongoing, and that there is a great hope in it. And that, I mean, if you're not a Baha'i, but if you are a Baha'i, there's also, you know, we've been asked this year, especially, to focus on race amity and all the ways towards building unity. And of course, communities all over the world or all over the country rather, are specifically focused on that, reading those letters and engaging those activities to the best of their ability. And this is another space to learn and grow and engage. Here's a tiny example. We have, one of the initiatives we have is helping people to plan a successful Race Amity Day. That's also one of the breakout sessions at our conference. But we've done little webinars for people to come and learn how to do that and how to go to their state, you know, and try to make Race Amity Day a state initiative. And we have groups that are doing this, working on this all over the country. And some of the groups, you know, they get so excited, they keep us in the loop of what they're doing. We have a group from Florida right now that's going to be presenting at the conference about the initiatives, not just that they're doing for Race Amity Day, but all the things they've learned and are continuing to grow so much that they have their own dialogues and circles, and they're going to be sharing how to get that started in communities.
So that one of the initiatives is I don't know if it's called initiative, but is the game, breaking it down to e pluribus unum. And this game helps to really foster some amazing conversations around race that aren't centered in shame and blame, right? And so people have, like my dad did this, he just invited people in his neighborhood to come and play the game, just a very small, intimate group. And the conversations and the friendships that came out of that was amazing. So, you know, even that, you know, is something that somebody can do, you know, with the game, just inviting people and having these meetings where they have this ongoing discussion about race.
One of the overall things too that we hope come from this experience, Bill, is that this is a huge learning curve for us. I mean, we did the virtual Race Amity Day celebration, which was sort of a beginner level because it was just a one-day thing. We lined people up and they all came on and gave many comments about what Race Amity means to them, and had tremendous viewing, you know, as I said, 16,000 plus viewings. But now we're trying to use the skills and the insights that we're gaining from this virtual conference to really frame how we're going to approach the centenary next May, which we're hoping actually will be 10 times and literally 10 times the viewing and access across the nation to what the Race Amity Day work is. So we're learning so many things from this experience. So how to do it better. So that'll be one of our assessments. And of course, as already been mentioned, how this conference spurs people to advance their work to promote race amity. The power of it actually lies with the individuals. We're trying to energize the Race Amity base. That's what we're doing. We're trying to really energize further, because they are energized to a certain degree. And it's enormous, the power. And one piece of certainty that to all the listeners and all of us who are doing this, to keep in our minds that there is the power. Race Amity has an exponential power on the human heart. There's in the morality, it can affect people, and it does affect people. And it's that same exponential power of the morality of the abolitionist movement, the civil rights movement, that changes people. And it only needs, at the core a small group of dedicated souls who are really fixed on the proposition. So we're hoping to keep those people energized and increasing it. And each one recruit one and all those other little ditties that we can put forth. So we hope to have people really feel empowered after this experience.
Smitty, thank you so much for bringing this team to the chat today. Bill, Martha, Michelle, thank you for joining us here. Our next Bahai.Chat program will be on Saturday, November 14th, and will feature team members from the Patricia Locke Foundation who are working to impact lives at the Standing Rock Reservation. Their vision is to promote a just, regenerative, unified world centered on indigenous wisdom, which nurtures the full potential, dignity, and esteem of all people, and inspires a lifelong dedication to actively respect, protect, and defend the rights of people and the planet. The session will include Rainn Wilson as host, and special guests include Kevin Locke, among others. Again, Team Race Amity, thank you so much for being here. And I know a lot of folks are going to be registering for the coming conferences. The speaker lineup, the whole program is quite extraordinary. I encourage everyone to go there. And thank you all so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having us.
Thank
Thank
you.